This is Jess from 3-Way Fitness, and you're listening to D from 3-Way Fitness, and we're going to give you some tips to help your squat. So we're going to start with focusing on core bracing and core stability. So we want to think about aligning our posture. So a really great way to do this is by pulling up on the pubic bone so it cues to our deep core to fire on, and then drawing down gently on the rib cage so we close off any hinge points in the upper back. When we're drawing the rib cage down, we want to be careful that we don't crunch it down and create downward pressure onto the pelvic floor and slump down like this beautiful posture Jess is showing us. So we want to think about getting tall and lengthening through the spine while maintaining that good core tension. So we want to hold that as we drop down into our squat. And if we keep nice stability all through the spine, that's going to make sure that our glutes and hamstrings and quads can take on the load instead of the spine. Now our spine is working isometrically to keep the body nice and straight. So now we're going to talk about improving our squat by finding our center of mass. It's really important that we keep our weight evenly distributed across the body so that we don't end up shifting one way or another. The goal is to have our center of mass right over our midfoot. When we can keep the weight right over the midfoot from start to finish, so from bottom to top in the squat, this makes sure that the weight we're doing is traveling in a straight path. So if we shift the weight too far into the heels, we're going to see that her whole body weight shifts behind her, and we'll even see her toes lift off and she's falling over there. So as soon as we sit back, it makes it way harder to keep the core on, and we tend to let that go. If we had a weight here, then this would put a lot of pressure onto the low back. And see, she's having to really reach out to find her balance. If her weight was shifted too far forward in the toes, we would see that she would lose contact with the heels at some point, most likely, which is going to make her way less stable under a load. She's going to put a lot more tension into the knees and quads and kind of avoid any support or advantage from the muscles of the posterior chain, which would be the glutes and hamstrings. So when Jess gets her weight right in that midfoot, it's kind of where your shoelaces would be on your shoes. She's going to have really great control over her movement, and it's going to be easiest for her to be able to feel her core tension and really hold on to that brace that we were just talking about. So this way she can be nice and level, and wherever she's going to add her weight, whether it's on her back or on her chest, she can feel really centered and in control of her movement and in control of her load. When we have that good control, it's going to be way easier to manage any extra loads we have. Look at her go! So our last component in breaking down the squat is going to be looking at our foot position and looking at Jess's beautiful foot. So fabulous. Work it, girl. So with our foot, we want to make sure we're active with the arch. So it's really easy when we relax our foot to let our arch collapse to the floor, and the ankle and knee tend to follow that. When the ankle and knee collapse inward, it takes tension away from the outside of the hip, which is going to be a really helpful spot to create torque and stability through our lift. So when we create that active arch, we're making sure to keep the whole ball of the foot down, all the toes, and the heel down as well. We lift up that arch so it helps straighten up the leg from the ankle through the knee and up to the hip. From here, we can create nice stability and nice torque so we have a strong base for the squat. With that active foot, it's going to be way easier to center our weight right at our midfoot like we had just talked about. So now she's going to go into her squat with a really strong arch, and we're going to see that her knees track in line with the toes. She's creating really good outward tension from her feet to the knees to the outside of the hips. Then if she comes up without having that active arch, we're going to see her go into her squat with a little less stability. The ankles might collapse, the knees might collapse, and then she's not getting as much power from the outside of the hips to go through the movement. So these are the 3 things we really want to focus on to help improve your squat and make it the strongest squat you can have. Nice work, Jess!
Hi guys, I'm going to start off by talking to you a little bit about squat variations. There are 3 categories of squats. There are typical squats or regular squats. There are split squats, which means we are going longitudinal, and there are lateral squats. First, let's talk about regular squats. There are 2 different types of stances that we're typically seen in squats. There are conventional, which means feet about shoulder width apart, foot position varies person to person, and you would squat like that. The second type of squat is a sumo stance. This one's also very common, and it means a wider stance. And then there's the in-between, which usually is called hybrid. The second type of squats are split squats. We have squats that go longitudinally. These can be done in a couple different ways. They can be done with both feet on the ground or with one foot removed. Our third type of squat is a lateral squat, moving side to side, for example. However, the one big thing that we don't see in squats is a foot change position during the squat. That's where lunges come into play. So the goblet squat is probably the most essential, basic, amazing squat that you can do. Basically, you are going to hold a weight like a goblet. This simulates a front squat, but it keeps your load directly in front of you. You're going to grab your weight, keep it nice and close to the body, and you're going to go through their squat using the 3 important factors that we talked about earlier. From the front, and from the back, everything's nice and even. And that's your goblet squat. So sometimes you might see people using a bar for this. You might see them using dumbbells. In my case, I'm going to be using a kettlebell. So I'm going to take my kettlebell and I'm going to place it on my back. I'm going to hold it with my arms like so. Now, because it's mounted on my back, this changes my center of mass slightly. You'll notice that I lean forward a little bit more. This is to ensure that my center of mass stays between my feet. This is how a front racked squat and a back racked squat differ. This is important to know for how your body position should be. It saves your back. A split squat is a longitudinal squat that again looks similar to a lunge, however, we are not moving our feet. One foot will be forward and one foot will be back. We want to ensure that our hips are facing forward, not open. If I come down with my hips open, I'm not able to drive appropriately through this hip. When I come down, I want to make sure that I stay on my toes on my back foot at all times to really get good drive out of that leg. Another thing we want to pay attention to is that we're not overextending. You'll notice here that I'm putting a little bit of compression on my low back. This depends on the amount of actual extension you're capable of in the front of your hip. So for me, that's a little bit leaning forward. That is my comfort position. This differs from person to person. I'm going to come down and I'm going to extend up. You'll notice that I did not move forward or backwards. I moved down and up. If I was to move forward and backwards, I'm not getting the true benefit out of this exercise. I want both my legs to drive and work on a little bit of balance. You'll also notice that my front knee stayed a little bent. This allows for proper drive out of the back leg. A Cossack squat looks a lot like a side lunge. The major difference is that our feet are not changing position. In a side lunge, I would step and go into a lunge. Whereas in a Cossack squat, I'm going to start with my base position, my feet slightly pointed out, and a really wide stance. In this stance, you want to make sure that you're creating room for your pelvis to move between your legs. You want to make sure that you're going into external rotation on the side that you're going into to allow that space. So as I'm coming down towards one side, I want to ensure that I'm pushing my knee outwards towards my toes and coming down. You'll notice that I hinge forward or bring my torso down quite a bit. This allows for a nice deep position. This may not be attainable for everybody right away. This is a position that you will need to work into getting deeper and deeper. You'll notice that my torso stays facing forward. A common error here is that people will rotate to face their knee. They find that this balances their weight better, but it takes away from the position. Secondly, another common error is the heel rising. People try to stop themselves from falling by coming up onto their toes. This is not good for your knees. You always want to have a nice flat base, like we talked about in our foot position in early squat mechanics. You want to have even distribution so that you can have proper form, protect your back, and proper core engagement. Again, let's look at that. Is exactly what it sounds like. It is a split squat with one leg floating. You're going to stand on one leg, and you're going to place your other leg extremely bent, flexing that hamstring. Let's use our arms to help us balance. We're going to come down, touch that knee to the ground, and back up. Try a few. Pistol squats are common in the fitness industry, and a lot of people like to try them. However, not a lot of people have the strength or the ankle mobility in order to get into them. A lot of people don't realize that ankle mobility is a huge part of a squat, especially in a pistol squat. So when we're doing a pistol squat, you will notice some rounding occurs in the low back. This is not always a bad thing. It's only bad when we are loaded. In this case, I'm only loaded with my body weight. In a pistol squat, I'm going to first lift one leg, and then I'm going to come down as low as I can comfortably. For some of you, that may be halfway, and that's okay. For others, it might be all the way to the floor. You'll notice the amount of ankle mobility required and the amount of effort it takes to hold that leg. Let's try a few.
Squats are one of the most basic movements that you should know, and there's 6 of them, maybe 7 depending on who you ask, but we'll stick with the 6 for now, which is the squat, the lunge, the push, the pull, the hinge, and the carry. It's one of the most foundational and functional movements that you can be good at. How many times a day are you squatting? Well, how many times a day do you sit down? How many times a day do you get back up from sitting down? Do you have pets? Kids? Do you go to the store and have to pick something up off the low shelf? This is an exercise that is mainly quad dominant, but we also get hamstrings involved, we get glutes involved, calves, and core. And depending on how we load it, we can get other muscles involved too. We'll talk about that at a different time when we're out of quarantine and can be in a proper gym. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Add us on social media at 3wave_fitness. That's 3wave_fitness on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you like our videos and you want to support us, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We have a whole bunch of cool tiers to include getting access to these videos early, as well as personalized programming and consultations with us directly. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next week.